as people pass on furniture, you may get different vibes depending on who owned the furniture, what they were like, and they can be magical. That doesn't mean that they're going to get up and start walking, Emma.
Damn it. I really want a chair that comes to me when I want to sit down. Hello, theologisters, sisters, and misters.
Welcome to the coven.
So, Arthur and I had a very special visit for the first time. We've been friends for, almost 12 years?
Yeah, almost 12.
And we decided, since neither of us had anything going on, we had been quarantining individually. And both of us are obviously very safe when it comes to CDC guidelines. And I decided to finally make the road trip up. I'm sure that episode has already been uploaded, but we did record one very chaotic episode together. That's up on Patreon if you guys are curious. That was a lot.
That was hectic. I love it.
We recorded our /paranormal stories. It's almost completely unedited because there was nothing I could do.
So please support our Patreon to see the completely unedited version of our chaos.
It is something. Like, you guys get like a good solid 75% of who we are. That other 25 is pure chaos. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in seeing that train wreck, feel free to go support us on Patreon. You can unlock that on the first tier, and we would really appreciate it. So that being said, since Arthur lives in Massachusetts, we decided to go visit Salem.
Well, it was a very cold, windy day.
We tried to keep, our outside exposure to a minimum. So we sort of condensed our trip as much as physically possible.
And the
double
people
masking
exposure as well. And we used constant hand sanitizer.
My hands got so dry.
That's why we have the lotion back home.
But yeah, so we were wearing double masks and all of that. And for me, wearing glasses, it got so foggy.
I also wear glasses, but I don't wear them when I wear my mask, so I walk around blind.
See, that's the thing. I'm too scared to walk around blind, so I suffer in silence. And
Your
everybody looks at
too
me.
Strong to do that.
Everybody looks at me and says, "Wow, is she an anime boy?" Because I can't see her eyes
So
behind her
fogged
fucking
up.
glasses.
You just pull off the glasses and it's just little specks.
It's just tiny little eyes. So, very first thing that Arthur was dead set on doing was going to the Salem Witch Museum. So we planned our whole trip around that. And let me tell you guys, it was just us on the tour. It was us and a single tour guide.
There were supposed to be other people too. He said there were supposed to be other people, but they never showed up.
Which was for the best.
So they paid for their tickets. They prepaid for their tickets because you have to prepay online right now. So they prepay for these tickets and then they just don't show up. So it was just us, and we got to move around the rooms and everything just freely. We could get up from our spot and walk to another section if we wanted to see better, which was good for me.
Definitely.
We were allowed to basically spend as much time in an area as we wanted.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I want to talk about the Witch Museum as a whole and your experience with that and how you felt about it. So basically the way that this particular museum is set up is that it's basically what was it, a 20-minute half-hour show?
Mm-hmm.
Where they had around in this circular room in almost a balcony section around the room, they had these animatronic people and figures that acted out different parts of the Salem witch trial.
Were they animatronic or were they just figurine?
They were just still figures, weren't they?
Yeah, they were just still figures.
Well, in my memory, because the story was just so vivid. So vivid. No, but really, it was really cool. So I want to know your opinion on the story, what your takeaways were.
It was really exciting and it was very informative. They put a lot of information into this into
Show.
the tour as they can and make it interesting because
It,
it is an interesting event.
but they did make it very engaging.
Yeah, they were very engaging with it. I actually learnt a thing or two about not just the history of witchcraft, but the history behind the Salem witch trials, of course. Um, I wish I knew what drove them mad like that. There's so many
Yeah.
theories.
So that was like the big thing, right? Is like it's these this group of like young girls that slowly started showing these like symptoms of, I guess at the time it was, they didn't have a better answer for it, so they called it witchcraft. So like they were saying like it could be some kind of psychedelic thing. Didn't they say there was some kind of like drug from like something that they were eating? It had like some kind of poisonous hallucinogenic.
I believe they said something along those lines, yes.
So that was one theory. The other theories were like that these girls were just so bored all day that they just started acting out and it just escalated.
It just doesn't seem like that one makes sense at all. But they were kind of trapped in a singular room a lot. There was this one scene where all the girls were trapped in a single room and weren't allowed to do a lot of things and they had to do just basically only chores and that was it.
They also touched on like the girls at that time weren't really allowed to play the same way that boys were outside, and they were very much taught to be like quiet and indoor. If you think of a child like today and you told them, your 8-year-old or whatever, to sit in a corner and I don't know, like churn butter for like 8 hours. And you do
Daily.
that day in and day out for like years. I mean, I can see if that was the case, I could totally see why some girls would just start going crazy and just acting up. Like that, honestly, I think that theory was the one that hit me the most before I saw the show, for the tour. And I was they had like all these blurbs up around the walls in the waiting room.
Mhm.
And I was reading one blurb about like the hallucinogenic idea and that theory. And at first I was like, that one makes a lot of sense. I could see that one being it. And then during the tour, they really got into like the fact that these girls were just so stifled. And then as soon as one started acting out, others started catching on. So it made it seem like they were, infecting each other with witchcraft, but really, to me, what it seemed like is a product of, in a sense, mental illness of, I mean, trauma.
But there were also adults that were accused by other adults, and this was a lot out of spite.
And a lot of like of the hysteria. Yeah.
Mhm. There was hysteria that was surrounding the witchcraft and all those younger people starting to go crazy, and so people were like, "Oh my gosh, it's witchcraft." And the nurses were accused of the witchcraft, so they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's these demonic things," which is they often spoke of devils and demonic things because they were of traditional religions.
The biggest fear was the devil. It was in
Yeah,
everything. Devil's lurking behind every decision you make. Don't misstep, you're fucked.
even simple things such as being a woman and being able to live on your own without a husband was seen as witchcraft.
Yeah, like you're not following exactly what the Bible says and also what I tell you the Bible says because you can't read. Devil, witchcraft. It's like, sorry you can't read and stick up for yourself because I say it's the devil, so that sucks for you. Like, and then of course, like that's where all of those, rumors that, witches worship the devil and get their power from the devil.
Now, Emma, let's not forget that men were also. One man had weights put on him.
Yeah, so he was crushed slowly by stone. Like he had like a wooden, like some sort of wooden platform stacked on top of him, and then just like stones slowly added and crushing his chest from the weight.
Because they wanted him to admit that he was performing witchcraft.
And so, I mean, first of all, I know a lot of people associate the word witch with females, and it's interesting to see that apparently that wasn't the case back then. wizard, warlock, sorcerer are all the boy terms. You got the only one that's like
But they're not.
I know,
They're
right?
not official terms at all.
It's all fantasy terms, and the only one that seems to be gender neutral in fantasy world is mage.
Yeah, and that's not even used. We just say witch.
Exactly.
A lot of witches are female, but a lot of witches are male as well, and we don't discriminate with gender. We really just don't care. We're talking about witchcraft and the craft itself. We're not talking to each other about our genders. That's not
Right.
important.
No, the only reason why I guess I'm fixating on that a little bit is because of the stigma. And I mean, it makes sense why people interpret the term witch to be feminine because of the amount of women that were tried at the Salem witch trials.
Not just that, but the media portrays
Yes,
witches as
female.
primarily female as well.
I keep bringing it up because it makes sense in this context.
It
Harry
does.
Potter shaped at least our generation and like the millennial generation, it shaped, our view in a sense and radicalized obviously in a very like fantasy sense. But, like, we learned a lot of these, like, little what we thought, Hermione is the witch, but Harry is the wizard, There's the school of witchcraft and wizardry, and,
Mhm.
like, that's just they came up with that binary. I remember, like, seeing the first movie, and I was just like, "Okay, that's just what it is." And it's not often that you see, like, a boy, wearing a witch hat and all of that.
But he should because it looks fantastic.
And I agree. But so that being said, I like the fact that because obviously you refer to yourself as a witch, and back then it was gender neutral. So it's just so weird. Like, where along the way did it stop being a gender neutral term?
I wanna point out, something I learned.
Yeah, go for it.
There was one female, she was one of the few first to be
Tried.
tried. She was not hung, but sent to jail, and she died there within a very short period of time. She had been accused of witchcraft. She was going to go to trial, and then she died in that jail. Now, her name was Sarah Osborne. She died on the 10th of May, 1692. They believe she was 49 years old, but she was one of the first victims and was placed in jail from the 7th of March to the 10th of May. We believe that she died due to the poor conditions in the jail, but there's no telling really.
So, like, why her specifically do you want to call her out among all the other victims of the trials?
Because if you remember from my first introduction, my last name is Osborne, and my aunt is Michelle Osborne. Her birthday is the 10th of May,
So, literally
the
the
day
day,
that
yeah.
this woman died.
Literally the day that this yeah, it's quite an anniversary. So,
Yeah.
is the assumption then that she's an ancestor of yours?
My aunt does believe in reincarnation. We laugh a lot and say that she's a witch. She does not practice witchcraft. My entire father's side actually does not practice witchcraft.
Yeah, it's through your mother's side,
Hmm.
which is interesting because you get obviously your last name from your father's side. So, do you think though that you might be like distant blood relatives, or do you think it's just like maybe an incarnation kind of thing and just a really interesting coincidence that you share a last name?
I think it might be an incarnation sort of thing. I don't think that we're blood relatives because it would have to be through my mother, and I'm not so sure about that one.
Mhm.
My ancestors came from Italy. You know that I've been looking through the ancestry stuff. I came from England, Ireland, and Italy.
So, but that being said, it definitely is very interesting that not only your aunt and this, unfortunate victim of the trial share a last name, but, two very significant dates in one's life, a death day and a birthday, to be on the same date as well. That's really interesting.
It is. So that's why I had to bring up Sarah.
No, and I'm glad you
And
did because, you were telling me about that while we were in the museum and, looking at these big posters that like list all of the names of the victims and when they had died. And you actually like pointed her out and was like, that's the one I was talking about. I was like, ah, it's so cool. Sucks that she died though.
We're sorry about your death, Sarah.
Sarah, if you're with us, you sound pretty rad. That's it.
I
That's all I
doubt
have to
she's with
say.
us, but you know.
Nah, she's probably in Salem. Should have said hi to Sarah while we were in Salem. Oh my god, what if okay, but, like, what if
We were going to go where all the hangings and things were, but we
it was so
were too
cold.
cold.
It was so
We were too
cold.
cold.
Um, okay,
Oh,
so oh, what? You
another
first.
one. My grandfather has an ancestor who served on the jury
Mhm.
for the witch trials
Oh, I didn't
and
know
is
that.
buried in Salem.
Oh.
That's why I wanted to go to that one location where the jurors were.
Well, here's the thing.
But it
We
was cold.
we will be going back, hopefully in a warmer month, maybe not in October, especially not while COVID is still running rampant. Um,
We are not going in October. It's far too hectic.
I would love to go back, and I know we were talking about, the possibility of ghost hunting, which would be really cool.
Support our Patreon for ghost hunting.
Support our Patreon if you want me to attempt to hunt a ghost, because 'cause I'll cry.
You know you want to see Emma cry.
Oh my god. Okay.
There was one more piece of information that I remember quite well. I didn't take notes on this bit, so I could be off by a couple years. But it was 10 to 11 years before I was even born that witchcraft was legal here.
Oh, yeah, that it could be, like, practiced as, like, a legal religion without discrimination.
Yes.
So, like, it was, like, what, in the '80s? That was, like, finally a thing?
Yeah, in the 80s, it was legal to be a witch. Before that, no.
That
So in the
it's
1700s, no.
I mean, it's so funny to me. Like, cause now I'm just thinking about, like, all the cool people back in, like, the 1950s that were secretly practicing witchcraft, and they were like, "We're hiding from the cops."
And of course,
Wow.
it wasn't just Salem who were witches, but this is the location that we visited
I mean,
and
that
we'll
was
be
the
going back
that was
to.
the epicenter.
At least in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the most famous ones.
So, but that being said, we visited 2 very different witch shops while we were in Salem. Different in the sense of, and I guess Arthur could talk about this more than I can, but the overall vibe, almost complete opposite. I want to talk about the first one that we went to first, obviously.
Okay, I am going to name drop these locations. However, this is not defamation. This is giving a personal opinion on the location. We're not saying do not go to this witch shop. We're just giving a personal opinion on the shop.
And just because our experience wasn't great does not mean that your experience won't be great. So, take it with a grain of salt. But the first shop that we went to, what was it called?
Crowhaven Corner.
And it sounded so rad. But like when we went in, to me, it felt very gimmicky. Like, it felt uh, like a gift shop in a way.
So I walked around the room to see if I got any sort of magic spark, anything. No magic vibe from anything but the furniture.
Which is so funny. Like, of all the things in there, like, there were candles and there were tarot decks and there were so many stones and herbal packets, and it was only the
Nothing
furniture.
spiked me. Yeah,
It was only
nothing.
the furniture.
So, furniture, if people don't know, it tends to take on the energy of people. And as people pass on furniture, you may get different vibes depending on who owned the furniture, what they were like, and they can be magical. That doesn't mean that they're going to get up and start walking, Emma.
Damn it. I really want a chair that comes to me when I want to sit down.
And that was the only thing that was magical in that shop for me.
So, I mean, that store, because this was the first shop that we went to. And I have to admit, I came out of that very disappointed. I was expecting to really like get that vibe of like homebrew, witchy. I don't know. And to me, it just felt like half the stuff in that shop I could just buy online for cheaper.
You could.
And like, so that's what rubbed me the wrong way. So obviously, Arthur's is a little bit more mystical in his reasoning, but even I didn't get such a great vibe from it. And it was after that that we decided to go to a second shop. It was a little bit of a walk away, but I think it was worth it.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this one.
This one is called Enchanted. Walking into this shop was a breath of fresh air. I was able to immediately feel that something in here was magical, at least. So I was like, okay, one thing in here is definitely magical. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll find out. Turns out it was almost everything, if not everything.
The shopkeep who was working there at the time, she was absolutely lovely, extremely informative. And I'll talk more about that in part two. But I want Arthur to talk more about his personal experience. I'll get into mine in the next episode.
My personal experience with the shop was I was actually in this shop to purchase a very specific stone for my baby witch friend. And he asked for this stone, and I was, on the hunt for it. The last shop did not meet my standards for it. I went into the shop, I bought the stone, and then I started looking around for myself. I was shown a couple candles that were made of actual beeswax and were used for different purposes, very tall pillar candles. I went into the back, found some smaller candles. Even the 7-day candles are there. There was pendulums. I've always wanted to do pendulum magic, so I bought one of those. I was really looking forward to finding one. And she taught us how to do them as well. She was a very helpful.
So, I mean, walking around the shop, there was everything from like statuettes to candles, both like handmade and otherwise. And there were spell kits, stones, some carved, and then loose polished gemstones.
I
Just
even got something for Morrigan.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely talk about that. So your experience, so walking around the shop in your head, you kind of had like your own little shopping list. And I
Hmm.
remember you asking the woman that was working there at the time if had anything in stock in regards to Morrigan. And I think she said like, oh, well, like we kind of have this like a couple of like Celtic things, but that's about it.
Did you just say Celtic instead of
I
Celtic?
thought it's pronounced Celtic.
No, it's Celtic.
Well, shit.
Celtic is a hockey team
Well,
for
shit.
New England,
Well, now I look dumb,
Massachusetts.
Arthur. You couldn't have just, like, let it go. You couldn't have just been like, "Oh,
No,
don't
I
worry about it."
can't.
Wow.
Oh no, sorry. Bruins is the hockey. Celtics are the Celtics hockey? I don't know. Somebody tell me what the Celtics are. I am a fake
Well,
Boston.
obviously, I don't know. She pointed out 1 or 2 things with Celtic symbols, and you weren't getting much from them, but what happened after that?
And so I started walking around and I was like, okay, I need to find something for Morrigan. I feel like there's something in here. I saw out of the corner of my eye something red, looked at it, then looked away. And then something in the back of my mind said, look back at that red thing. And I was like, what? It's just a shiny gemstone. It was a goblet that had one crow on all sides, so probably about four, and little Celtic knots in it, and it was very well made. And I was just like, I've never had a goblet for her, and that would have been very helpful on the Feast of the Morrigan to have. So obviously, I bought that.
So, to me, what was so interesting is that, first of all, you didn't know it was there, and you basically, like, heard Morgan be like, "Hey, you should turn around," and that's, like, you just immediately spot it, and you knew it was for her.
It's a common witch thing to actually have your deity say, hey, turn around or go here.
And, like, getting that, like, urge, right?
Yes, you get that immediate urge to go do the thing.
And so, like, when you told me that when we got back into the car, I was like, "Oh, shit." Like, that
Yeah,
that
you
was
didn't get a
cool.
full view of it until we
No,
got
I
into the
didn't.
car because I didn't pull it out of the bag because it was so big.
Yeah, we were both perusing, like, opposite sides of the shop. I wanted, to give Arthur time to really, like, get a feel for everything and make sure that he was getting everything that he wanted to. I didn't want him to feel, like, rushed or, I guess, or be distracting. But basically, what I wanted to say for wrapping up for this episode is I definitely had a bit of my own experience at this witch shop. So I'm not gonna touch on that now because 'cause we're running out of time, but we will be recording a part 2. And I'm gonna dive a little bit more into my personal experience, with witch shop number 2. I think you guys are gonna find it really interesting interesting. Let's just say that I experimented a little bit. I'm going to leave them with that. So that being said, hope you guys enjoy the cliffhanger. Next episode, we're going to get a little bit more into this. I think we're going to space it out, but look out for part 2. And you guys can hear a little bit more about, I guess, my experience.
It was quite surprising.
With witchcraft. And on that note, stay spooky.
Stay spooky.
Goodbye.